New Mexico is a land of breathtaking deserts, ancient cultures, and stunning landscapes. But beneath its beauty lies a dark history, one filled with ghostly apparitions, restless spirits, and tales of the supernatural. Tonight, we're diving deep into the most haunted locations in the Land of Enchantment. If you think you can handle the chills, join me as we uncover the terrifying hauntings of New Mexico. The haunting of James Hotel. The desert wind howled through the streets of Cimarron, New Mexico, rattling the windows of the old James Hotel. Ethan Harper pulled his jacket tighter around his body as he stepped out of his car, staring up at the historic building. He had read the stories, the legends of ghosts roaming its halls, of guests who had checked in but never checked out. And yet something had drawn him here. A historian and travel blogger, Ethan specialized in uncovering the truth behind haunted locations. He had explored dozens of allegedly haunted places before, but the James Hotel carried a reputation unlike any other. More than 26 documented murders had taken place within its walls during the lawless days of the Wild West. Spirits of gunslingers, cowboys, and outlaws supposedly roamed the halls. Room 18, in particular, was said to be cursed. Ethan stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking beneath his boots. The lobby smelled of aged wood and something faintly metallic, perhaps blood from a long-forgotten past. An elderly receptionist, her face lined with wrinkles, watched him with sharp, knowing eyes. "You must be Mr. Harper," she said, handing him an old-fashioned brass key. "Room 18. He hesitated. "Is it safe?" She offered a thin smile. "Depends on what you believe." Ethan took the key, his heart pounding. As he ascended the narrow staircase, he felt an oppressive weight settle on his chest. The air grew colder with each step. His room was at the end of the hall. The brass numbers on the door were tarnished, and the handle felt unnaturally cold as he turned it. Inside, the room was modest, antique furniture, a small bed, and a single window overlooking the darkened street. The walls bore faint bullet holes, remnants of the violence that had once plagued this place. Ethan set up his camera and recorder, determined to document any paranormal activity. Hours passed with nothing but the occasional creak of settling wood. Then, just past midnight, the temperature plummeted. A soft knock echoed from the door. Ethan's breath hitched. He approached cautiously and opened it. No one was there. But the hallway was different. It was no longer the dimly lit corridor of a historic hotel. Instead, it shimmered like a mirage, revealing a bar filled with men in dust-covered coats, laughing and drinking whiskey. Smoke hung thick in the air. A poker game was in progress at a corner table, and the sound of old-time music played from an unseen piano. Ethan blinked, and the vision wavered. A gunshot rang out. A man slumped over the poker table, blood spilling from his chest. The room erupted into chaos. Ethan stumbled backward, his head spinning. Then, silence. He was back in the dimly lit hallway of the James Hotel. The vision had faded, but his heart pounded as if he had been in the middle of it. Ethan returned to his room, locking the door behind him. He played back the audio recorder. His own voice filled the speaker, narrating his findings, until it wasn't his voice anymore. A whisper cut through the static. "Get out!" A shadow moved in the corner of the room. Ethan turned, and his breath left him. A figure stood near the bed, a man dressed in 19th century attire, his face twisted in rage. His chest was riddled with bullet holes, dark stains spreading across his shirt. "You're not welcome," the apparition growled, stepping forward. Ethan scrambled back, his body pressing against the door. The lights flickered violently. The walls groaned as if the hotel itself were breathing. The spirit lunged, and a powerful force slammed into Ethan, knocking the air from his lungs, and then darkness. When Ethan awoke, he was sprawled on the floor of the hotel lobby. The elderly receptionist loomed over him, her face unreadable. "I warned you," she said softly. "Room 18 doesn't like visitors." Shaken, Ethan staggered to his feet and stumbled out of the James Hotel into the cold night air. He never looked back, but as he drove away, he swore he saw a figure watching him from the second-floor window. Room 18 had claimed another victim. Whispers at La Posada. The desert wind howled through the narrow streets of Santa Fe as Claire Jensen stepped out of her rental car, pulling her coat tightly around her. The cold wasn't just from the late autumn air, it was something deeper, something that settled in her bones the moment she laid eyes on La Posada Hotel. It was supposed to be a research trip. Claire was a travel journalist specializing in haunted locations, and La Posada had plenty of stories to tell. Once a grand estate built by Abraham Staub in the 19th century, it had since been converted into a luxury hotel. But its beauty masked something darker. Most guests came and left without incident, but others, those sensitive to the unseen, spoke of strange occurrences. Unexplained whispers in the halls, doors locking on their own. And most famously, the spirit of Julia Staub, Abraham's wife, who had allegedly never left. As Claire checked in, the receptionist, a young woman with wary eyes, handed her a brass key. "You're in room 256, she said. "If you need anything, just call the front desk." Something in her voice suggested don't ask too many questions. Claire nodded and took the key, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. She didn't believe in ghosts, not really. But the stories intrigued her, and she had made a career out of exploring them. The second-floor hallway was dimly lit, the antique sconces flickering as if struggling against some unseen force. Claire's room was at the very end, a corner suite with a balcony. The space was beautifully decorated in a blend of old-world charm and modern luxury, yet the air inside felt thick. Heavy. She set her bag down and turned on the lamp. The glow was weak, barely reaching the edges of the room. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Claire took a deep breath and shook off the unease. Setting up her laptop, she began typing. La Posada Hotel, a place of beauty and history, holds a secret under its lavish exterior. A sudden knock at the door made her jump. She glanced at the time, 10:47 p.m. Who would be visiting this late? Hesitating, she got up and peered through the peephole. Another knock, louder this time. She hesitated before unlocking the door and pulling it open. The hallway was empty. Only the dim flickering lights and the long stretch of Persian rugs greeted her. Claire exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Probably the wind. Maybe even her mind playing tricks. She closed the door, locking it firmly. As she turned around, she froze. The closet door, which had been shut when she arrived, was now wide open. Her heart pounded. She stared into the darkness of the closet, half expecting something to step out. But it was empty. After a few moments, she forced a laugh. "All right," she muttered. "You win, La Posada. You're creepy." She closed the closet, making sure it latched. Then, just as she turned back toward the bed, she heard it. A whisper. Faint, right behind her ear. "He's still here." Claire spun around so fast she nearly tripped. No one was there. But the closet door was open again. The mirror. That night, Claire slept with the lights on. Every creak of the old building sent her heart racing, but nothing else happened. The next morning, she shook off the fear and reminded herself why she was here. She had planned to interview the staff, but first, she wanted to explore. As she wandered the halls, she took notes about the artwork, the architecture, the eerie sense of being watched. The hotel was truly beautiful, yet every now and then, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. In one of the sitting rooms, she found a grand mirror with an ornate gold frame. The glass was old, slightly warped, and it gave off a strange, wavy reflection. As Claire stared at her own image, she noticed something, a figure standing behind her, dressed in a flowing black gown. A woman. Claire's breath hitched. She spun around, expecting someone to be there. Nothing. She turned back to the mirror. The woman was gone. A shiver ran down her spine. She snapped a picture of the mirror with her phone, but when she checked the screen, there was only her reflection. No woman. This wasn't just a story anymore. The truth about Julia. Determined to find answers, Claire sought out one of the older staff members, a woman named Maria who had worked there for nearly 30 years. "I saw something in the mirror," Claire said carefully. "A woman in black." Maria's expression darkened. "Julia Staub." Claire leaned in. "What really happened to her?" Maria hesitated before speaking. They say Abraham Staub was a hard man. Controlling. Julia was trapped in this house, and when she fell into depression, she rarely left her room. Some say she died of illness. Others say, she lowered her voice, she was driven to madness. And maybe, just maybe, she never left. Claire shivered. And the mirrors? Maria pursed her lips. Julia loved mirrors. Before she died, she was often seen staring into them, whispering to herself. People say if you see her in one, she's watching you. Claire's stomach turned. The last night that evening, Claire returned to her room with an uneasy feeling. As she packed her bags, preparing to leave in the morning, she kept glancing at the mirror above the dresser. Finally, she forced herself to walk over to it. She stared at her reflection. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. She let out a breath. Maybe she really was imagining things. Then, her reflection blinked. But she hadn't. Claire staggered back, heart pounding. The image in the mirror wasn't her anymore. Julia's face stared back at her. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Lips barely moving, forming silent words. Then, a whisper filled the room. Help me! The lamp flickered. The air grew thick. The closet door slammed open on its own. Claire grabbed her keys, yanking open the door and bolting down the hall. She didn't stop running until she was in the lobby. The receptionist looked up unsurprised. Room 256? She asked quietly. Claire swallowed hard, nodding. The woman sighed. You're not the first. The departure. Claire didn't sleep that night. By sunrise, she was in her car, the hotel growing smaller in her rearview mirror. She didn't know what she had seen, a trick of the mind, or something real. But she knew one thing for sure. Some stories were better left untold, and some spirits never checked out. The old state penitentiary of Santa Fe loomed against the desert skyline, its weathered stone walls whispering of the horrors that once thrived within. Though abandoned for decades, the prison's reputation had only grown darker over time. Tales of unrest, spirits, and ghostly wails haunted the place, drawing in the curious and the foolish alike. Jonas Carter, a freelance documentarian obsessed with uncovering the truth behind paranormal legends, found himself staring at the penitentiary's rusted iron gates just before sunset. Accompanied by his cameraman, Felix, he intended to capture undeniable proof of the supernatural. Locals had warned him against entering, citing the infamous riot of 1980, one of the bloodiest in American history. Guards were butchered, prisoners tortured. So much blood had soaked into the prison floors that the stains never truly faded. Ready? Jonas asked, adjusting the settings on his camera. Felix swallowed hard. As I'll ever be. They stepped through the entrance, past the warning signs, their boots crunching over shattered glass and fallen debris. The stale air reeked of mildew, rust, and something else, something foul and lingering. They moved deeper into the penitentiary, filming each crumbling hallway, each rusted cell. The dying sunlight cast long, skeletal shadows through broken windows, making the corridors appear endless. Then, as the last traces of daylight vanished, the temperature dropped drastically. Jonas glanced at Felix. Feel that? Felix nodded, teeth chattering. It's freezing all of a sudden. A whisper drifted through the air. Faint at first, then louder. A tortured moan, guttural and pain-stricken. The hair on Jonas' arms stood on end. Keep rolling, he whispered. They followed the sound, moving cautiously toward cell block 4, ground zero of the 1980 riot. Bloodstains still marred the walls. The scent of burnt flesh clung to the air, though the fires had long since been extinguished. Jonas panned his camera across the ruined corridor. This is where the worst of it happened, he murmured. Prisoners executed one another, guards set on fire. There were no survivors in this block. Then, a sudden clang echoed down the hallway. Felix jumped. What the hell was that? Jonas turned toward the noise, heart pounding. A cell door, one that had been ajar, was now fully shut. Did you see it move? Felix's voice trembled. Jonas nodded. Keep the camera steady. A breath of icy air ghosted past them. Footsteps, heavy, shuffling, approached from the darkness ahead. Jonas squinted into the shadows, lifting his camera. Hello? Silence. Then, the footsteps came again, faster this time. A shadowy figure surged forward, its form distorted, shifting like smoke. Its face was a ruin of burns and scars, hollow eyes locked onto Jonas. A scream erupted from Felix as the figure lunged. Jonas stumbled back, camera shaking as he captured the ghastly visage in terrifying detail. Then, darkness swallowed them. Jonas woke to the sound of rattling chains. His head pounded, his vision blurred. He was no longer in the corridor but in a small, filthy cell. The air was thick with rot. He tried to move, but his wrists were shackled to the wall. Felix? He called, voice hoarse. No answer. A scraping sound came from the hall. Then, a voice, deep and ragged. You shouldn't be here. Jonas' blood turned to ice. Who are you? The darkness beyond the cell bars shifted. Something loomed just beyond the reach of the dim light, a figure watching, waiting. Then, the figure stepped forward, revealing its face, or what was left of it. Skin hung in charred tatters, eyes burned to empty sockets, mouth twisted in a perpetual scream. Jonas' breath hitched. The realization struck him like a hammer. This was one of the victims. One of the prisoners burned alive during the riot. The specter lifted a skeletal hand and pointed toward the door. The chains around Jonas' wrists fell away with an unnatural clatter. He hesitated, but the ghost hissed, "Run!" Jonas didn't wait to question it. He bolted from the cell, hard hammering as he sprinted through the corridor. The air around him vibrated with whispers and screams. Shadows twisted, figures emerging from the darkness, prisoners, guards, all trapped in the horror of their final moments. Then, he saw Felix. His friend was slumped against a wall, camera still clutched in his white-knuckled grip, eyes wide with terror but lifeless. Jonas choked back a cry, but there was no time to grieve. The prison was alive with rage, the spirits growing restless. He ran, dodging grasping hands, evading the faceless entities that clawed at him from the cells. The entrance was in sight. A breath away. Just as he reached the threshold, a violent force yanked him back. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding through his ribs. He turned onto his back, staring up at the black mass hovering over him, a writhing, amorphous entity composed of agony and malice. A chorus of voices screamed within it, tortured souls forever bound to the penitentiary. The entity reached for him, its touch searing cold. Jonas struggled, his breath faltering as darkness began to creep into the edges of his vision. Then, a flash. Felix's camera. Still recording. The red light blinked in the darkness. The spirits recoiled. The entity shrieked, its form dissolving into shadows. Jonas seized his chance. With every ounce of strength, he lunged for the exit, tumbling into the dirt outside. Silence. The air was warm again. The prison loomed behind him, still and lifeless. Jonas turned back only once. In the window of cell block 4, he saw Felix's reflection, staring at him with a sad, knowing expression before fading into the darkness. Jonas never spoke of what happened that night. The footage, when reviewed, captured nothing but static, except for one frame. One chilling, impossible frame. Felix, standing among the dead. The Luna Mansion, a haunting in Los Lunas. The Luna Mansion stood proudly in the heart of Los Lunas, New Mexico, a grand, white, Victorian structure that defied time itself. Built in the late 1800s for the influential Lunotero family, it had long since been converted into a restaurant. But beneath its elegant facade and fine dining experience, the mansion held a darker, more spectral reputation. Locals spoke in hushed tones of the ghosts that roamed its halls. Some swore they had seen the spirit of Josefita Otero, the matriarch of the family, still watching over her home. Others told tales of shadowy figures lurking in corners, whispers that echoed down the empty corridors, and the sudden scent of roses lingering in the air with no apparent source. For Ava and her team of paranormal investigators, specter seekers, the mansion was the perfect location for their next investigation. Armed with cameras, EVP recorders, and an eagerness to uncover the truth, they arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the mansion in eerie twilight. "Are we sure about this?" Ryan, the team's skeptic, asked as he unloaded equipment from their van. Come on, Ryan, Ava teased. You didn't see the dozens of reports? Shadow figures, moving objects, phantom whispers. This place is gold. The mansion's current owner, a middle-aged woman named Maria, greeted them at the entrance. She had run the restaurant for over a decade and had grown accustomed to the paranormal activity. I don't mind the spirits, she admitted as she led them inside. Especially Josephita. She's never been harmful. If anything, I think she just wants to be acknowledged. Ava listened intently as Maria recounted unexplained occurrences, plates flying off shelves, lights flickering, and the sensation of unseen hands brushing against her skin. The team set up their base in what had once been the formal dining room. As midnight approached, they split into pairs. Ava and Ryan took the grand staircase to the upper floors, while their tech specialist, Jamie, stayed in the dining room to monitor the cameras. The building creaked as they ascended, the aged wood whispering beneath their feet. Ava switched on the EVP recorder. If there's anyone here with us, please let us know. Give us a sign. Silence. Then, a shuffling sound, like the rustle of fabric against the wooden floor. Ryan tensed. Did you hear that? Ava nodded, scanning the dimly lit corridor. The air grew noticeably colder. She took a step forward, then gasped as something tugged at her sleeve. Whipping around, she saw nothing but shadows shifting along the walls. Downstairs, Jamie's monitors flickered. The static cleared just long enough to reveal a blurred, ghostly figure standing near the bar. He frantically radioed Ava. We've got movement down here! Ava and Ryan hurried back, arriving just as Jamie pointed at the screen. The image was faint but undeniable, a woman in a flowing dress, standing motionless. Maria, who had stayed to observe, paled. That's her. That's Josephita. Ava took a deep breath and stepped into the dining area, voice steady. Josephita, if you're here, we mean no harm. Can you communicate with us? For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the chandelier above them swayed violently. Glasses clinked on the bar, and the soft scent of roses filled the room. A gentle, almost sorrowful sigh whispered through the air. Jamie's eyes widened. Did you hear that? Ava felt a chill run down her spine. She's here. Maria placed a hand over her heart. She always loved this house. She'll never leave. The team stayed until dawn, recording footsteps, whispers, and even capturing a faint voice on the EVP that seemed to say, "My home." It was undeniable proof that the Luna mansion was still watched over by its ghostly guardian. As they packed up, Ava looked back at the grand house. The sun's golden rays illuminated the mansion's white walls, momentarily washing away the shadows of the night. She smiled, knowing that some spirits linger not out of malice, but love, and the Luna mansion, it seemed, was still very much loved. New Mexico is a land of mystery and beauty, but it also holds a deep connection to the paranormal. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, these haunted places tell stories of tragedy, history, and the unknown. If you've ever visited any of these locations or have your own ghostly encounters, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through New Mexico's haunted past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another terrifying tale.